The Valkyrie flagship was dying. Its great engines had gone silent 3 hours ago, and now the massive ship drifted through the empty darkness of space like a wounded animal waiting for death. The hull was covered with burn marks from plasma weapons and deep holes from kinetic rounds. Inside, the lights flickered on and off, and the air recyclers made strange sounds that worried everyone who heard them. Commander Ethan Cole stood on the bridge of his ship, the horizon, and watched the alien vessel through the main viewport. His ship was small compared to the Valkyrie flagship, but it was fast and well-armed. More importantly, it was the only ship close enough to respond to the distress signal. "Sir, we are receiving another transmission," said Lieutenant Amy Grant, his second-in-command. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "They are asking for immediate medical assistance. They say their princess is dying." Ethan turned to look at her. "Their princess?" "Yes, sir. Princess Lyara of the Valkyrie Empire. According to their message, she was attacked by an assassin. The poison is killing her, and their doctors cannot stop it." Ethan thought about this for a long moment. The Valkyrie were not enemies of Earth, but they were not exactly friends either. The two species had met only 5 years ago, and their relationship was careful and distant. The Valkyrie were an old race, much older than humans, and they often looked down on the younger species of the galaxy. But none of that mattered right now. Someone was dying, and Ethan could help. "Prepare a shuttle," he said. "I am going over there myself." Amy looked at him with surprise. "Sir, that could be dangerous. We do not know what happened on that ship. It could be a trap." "It could be," Ethan agreed. "But if their princess really is dying, then every minute we waste talking about it brings her closer to death. I will take a medical team with me. You have command of the horizon until I return." Amy wanted to argue more, but she knew that look in her commander's eyes. Ethan Cole was not a man who stood by and watched when he could act. It was what made him a good leader, even if it sometimes scared the people who served under him. 20 minutes later, Ethan stepped off the shuttle and onto the Valkyrie flagship. The first thing he noticed was the smell. The air was thick with smoke and something else, something chemical that burned his nose and made his eyes water. The second thing he noticed was the bodies dot. There were at least a dozen Valkyrie lying in the landing bay. Their silver skin turned gray in death. They had been shot with energy weapons, and their wounds were still smoking. "What happened here?" asked Dr. Lisa Monroe, the chief medical officer who had come with Ethan. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. But right now, those eyes were hard with shock. A Valkyrie soldier approached them. He was wounded, with a deep cut on his arm that had been wrapped with torn cloth. His uniform was burned and dirty, but he still stood straight and proud. "I am Guard Captain Tarek," he said. His voice was tired but steady. "We were attacked by Crixian assassins. They came for the princess. Most of them are dead now, but one of them managed to poison her before we killed him." "Take us to her," Ethan said. The walk through the damaged ship was long and terrible. They passed through corridors filled with debris and rooms where fires still burned. They saw more bodies, both Valkyrie and the strange insect-like creatures that Ethan guessed were the Crixian assassins. The battle had been fierce, and many had died. Finally, they reached the medical bay. It was one of the few parts of the ship that still had full power, and it was filled with activity. Valkyrie doctors and nurses moved quickly between patients, their silver hands working with tools that Ethan did not recognize dot in the center of the room. Inside a glass healing pod lay Princess Lyara. Ethan had never seen a Valkyrie royal before. He knew that they were supposed to be beautiful by the standards of their people, but he was not prepared for what he saw. Lyara was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow faintly from within. Her hair was long and white, spread out around her head like a halo. Her features were sharp but elegant, and even in her current state, she carried an air of quiet dignity. But she was dying. That was clear even to Ethan's human eyes. Her skin was turning dark in places, and her breathing was shallow and uneven. The machines around her beeped with warnings that needed no translation. An older Velthari approached them. He wore the robes of a high official, and his face was lined with age and worry. "I am Consul Varric," he said. "I serve as the princess's chief advisor. You are the human commander?" "I am Commander Ethan Cole of the Earth Federation," Ethan replied. "This is Dr. Lisa Monroe, our chief medical officer. We came to help." Varric looked at them with an expression that Ethan could not quite read. It might have been hope, or it might have been doubt. "Your help is welcome, Commander, but I fear it may be too late. The Crixian assassin used a poison called the Black Sleep. It attacks the blood itself, destroying it from within. Our doctors have tried everything, but nothing works. The princess has perhaps 10 hours left to live." Dr. Monroe stepped forward. "May I examine her? And see the data from your medical scans?" Varric hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. "Of course. At this point, we will try anything." The Velthari doctors shared their information with Dr. Monroe, and she studied it carefully. Ethan watched her face as she worked, looking for any sign of hope. For a long time, there was nothing. Then, slowly, her expression changed. "Commander," she said quietly, "I need to speak with you privately." They moved to a corner of the medical bay, away from the Velthari. "What is it?" Ethan asked. "This poison," Lisa said, keeping her voice low. "It targets copper-based blood. The Velthari have copper in their blood, like some earth creatures. That is why it is killing her so effectively. And humans have iron-based blood. The poison would not work on us at all. In fact, certain compounds in human blood might actually be able to neutralize the toxin." Ethan felt his heart beat faster. "Are you saying we could save her with a blood transfusion?" Lisa shook her head slowly. "It is not that simple. Cross-species blood transfusion is incredibly dangerous. The chances of rejection are very high. Her body might attack the human blood as a foreign invader, which would kill her even faster than the poison." "But there's a chance," Ethan said. It was not a question. Lisa looked at him for a long moment. "Yes, there is a small chance. If we could find a way to filter the human blood, to remove the elements that would cause rejection while keeping the compounds that could fight the poison, it might work. But it would require a lot of blood. More than we could safely take from any one person. And the donor would be at serious risk." Ethan was quiet for a moment, thinking. He looked back at the healing pod where Princess Layara lay dying. He thought about the war that would come if she died, about the billions of lives that hung in the balance. And he thought about the simple fact that a young woman was suffering, and he might be able to stop it. "How much blood would you need?" he asked. Lisa's eyes went wide as she understood what he was suggesting. "Commander, no. It would be too dangerous. You could die. How much?" "At least 2 liters, maybe more. And the extraction process would have to be slow and carefully controlled. It would take hours, and the strain on your body would be extreme." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then we should get started. We do not have much time." Lisa grabbed his arm. "Ethan, listen to me. This is not just risky. This is almost certainly going to kill you. There has to be another way." "If there is another way, I do not see it," Ethan said gently. "And neither do you. That woman over there is going to die, unless we do something, and her death will start a war that will kill millions. I am just one person. The math is simple." "Math," Lisa repeated, her voice bitter. "Is that all this is to you? Numbers?" "No," Ethan said. "It is not about numbers at all. It is about doing what is right, even when it is hard, even when it hurts." That is what being human means, Lisa. We do not look away from suffering when we have the power to help. Lisa stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she let go of his arm. "You are the most stubborn man I have ever met," she said. Ethan smiled. "I will take that as a compliment. Now, let us go save a princess." Consul Varek listened to the human doctor explain the plan, and his face showed many emotions. First there was confusion, then disbelief, and finally something that looked almost like fear. "You are telling me," he said slowly, "that your commander wants to give his own blood to save the princess? Blood from a completely different species?" "That is correct," said Dr. Lisa Monroe. "We believe that certain compounds in human blood can neutralize the Crixian poison, but the process is extremely dangerous for both of them." "This is madness," said one of the Velthari doctors, a thin woman with sharp features. "Cross-species blood transfusion has never been successfully performed. The princess's immune system will attack the foreign blood. She will die screaming as her own body tears itself apart." "Not if we filter the blood properly," Lisa replied. She pulled up a holographic display showing complex molecular structures. Human blood contains iron-based hemoglobin. This is the key to fighting the poison. But it also contains proteins and other elements that would trigger rejection in a Velthari body. If we can remove those elements while keeping the hemoglobin intact, we might be able to create a compatible transfusion. "Might," the Velthari doctor repeated. "You are asking us to gamble the princess's life on might." "The princess is already dying," Ethan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He had been standing silently near the healing pod, watching Lyra's pale face through the glass. "You said she has 10 hours. That was almost 1 hour ago. So now she has 9 hours, and that number keeps getting smaller. You can stand here and argue about whether this plan is crazy, or you can help us try to save her. The choice is yours." Consul Varek studied the human commander with new eyes. He had met humans before, at diplomatic functions and trade negotiations. They had always seemed so young to him, so eager and impatient. The Velthari had been traveling between stars for 20,000 years. Humans had only been in space for a few centuries. They were children compared to the elder races of the galaxy. But this human was not acting like a child. He was acting like a warrior, like someone who had faced death before and was not afraid to face it again. There was a strength in him that Varek had not expected. "Why?" Varek asked. "Why would you risk your life for someone you have never met? For a species that has not always been kind to your people?" Ethan turned to face him. "Because she's a person who needs help, and I can help her. That is enough. But the risk to yourself." "I understand the risk. I am choosing to take it anyway. That is what my people call courage, Consul. It is not the absence of fear. It is the choice to act in spite of fear." Varek was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well, Commander. We will help you. But I want you to understand something. If you die doing this, your death will not be forgotten. The Velthari Empire will remember your sacrifice for as long as our civilization exists." "I appreciate that," Ethan said. "But I would rather live if it is all the same to you." The next several hours were the longest of Ethan's life. The Velthari Medical Bay was transformed into a strange laboratory, with human and alien technology working side by side. Lisa Monroe and the Velthari doctors argued and discussed and calculated, trying to design a filtering system that could make human blood safe for Velthari use. Meanwhile, Ethan prepared himself for what was coming. He ate a large meal to build up his strength, then drank several liters of water and electrolyte solutions. The Velthari gave him supplements that were supposed to help his body produce blood faster, though they warned him that the effects would be limited. The human body cannot replace blood as quickly as we need it. Lisa explained as she prepared the transfusion equipment. Normally, it takes weeks to fully recover from major blood loss. We are going to be taking from you faster than your body can replace it. Your heart will have to work harder to pump less blood. Your organs will start to suffer from reduced oxygen. If we take too much... I know, Ethan said. You do not need to keep reminding me. I think I do, actually. Because you keep acting like this is no big deal. And it is a very big deal, Ethan. You could die on this table. Ethan reached out and took her hand. Lisa, I have been a soldier for 20 years. I have been shot, stabbed, blown up, and left for dead more times than I can count. Every time, I survived because I refused to give up. This is no different. I am going to give this princess my blood, and then I'm going to get up and walk out of here on my own 2 feet. That is not optimism. That is a promise. Lisa squeezed his hand, and he could see tears forming in her eyes. You better keep that promise, Commander. That is an order. Yes, ma'am. The procedure began at 1400 hours, ship time. Ethan lay on a modified Velthury medical bed, his arm connected to a complex machine that extracted his blood, processed it through a series of filters, and then stored it for transfusion. The machine was built from parts of both human and Velthury technology, a creation that had never existed before. At first, it was not so bad. Ethan felt tired, but that was expected. He watched the monitors that showed his vital signs, tracking his heart rate and blood pressure as they slowly began to change. The Velthury doctors moved around him like silver ghosts, checking readings and adjusting settings. After the first hour, he had given half a liter of blood. His heart rate had increased by 10 beats per minute, and he was starting to feel cold. After the second hour, he had given a full liter. The cold had spread through his entire body, and his hands were shaking. Lisa gave him warm blankets and adjusted the room temperature, but it did not help much. Your body is trying to compensate, she explained. It is pulling blood away from your extremities to keep your vital organs supplied. This is normal. It does not feel normal, Ethan said through chattering teeth. No, I imagine it does not. After the third hour, things started to get bad. Ethan had given nearly 1.5 liters of blood, and his body was starting to struggle. His heart was racing now, trying desperately to pump blood that was no longer there. His blood pressure was dropping, and his skin had turned pale and clammy. We need to slow down, Lisa said, her voice tight with worry. No, Ethan replied. His voice was weak, but his will was still strong. Keep going. The princess does not have time for us to slow down. Ethan, if we keep going at this rate, you will go into shock. Then deal with it. That is what you are here for. Lisa wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. They had calculated the minimum amount of blood needed for the transfusion, and they were not there yet. If they stopped now, everything they had done would be for nothing. So they continued. By the 4th hour, Ethan was barely conscious. He drifted in and out of awareness, his mind floating in a strange gray space between waking and sleeping. Sometimes he heard voices, speaking in languages he did not understand. Sometimes he felt hands on his body, checking his pulse and adjusting the equipment. Sometimes he saw faces looking down at him with expressions of concern and fear. He thought about his life, about the choices he had made and the paths he had taken. He had joined the military as a young man, eager to see the stars and protect his home. He had fought in battles and lost friends and watched civilizations rise and fall. He had never married, never had children, never built the kind of life that most people dreamed of, but he had done some good along the way. He had saved lives and protected the innocent and stood up for what was right. If this was the end, he could accept that. Still, he hoped it was not the end. He had made a promise to Lisa, and Ethan Cole always kept his promises. The extraction finally stopped at 1845 hours. Ethan had given 2 liters and 300 milliliters of blood, more than anyone had expected. His heart was barely beating, and his blood pressure was dangerously low. Lisa and the Valkyrie doctors worked frantically to stabilize him, pumping him full of fluids and medications. Meanwhile, across the medical bay, the transfusion into Princess Lyara had begun. The filtered human blood flowed through tubes and into her body, carrying with it the iron compounds that might be able to save her life. Ethan did not see any of this. He was unconscious, fighting his own battle in the darkness of his mind. But somewhere, on some level, he knew that his sacrifice was not in vain. He had done what he set out to do. The rest was up to fate. 3 days passed in darkness for Princess Lyara. She drifted in a sea of shadows, her mind wandering through strange dreams that made no sense. She saw worlds she had never visited, felt emotions she had never known, and heard voices speaking a language that was not her own. Sometimes the darkness was peaceful, like floating in warm water with no worries or cares. Other times it was terrifying, filled with monsters made of shadow and fire that chased her through endless corridors. She ran and ran but could never escape them. And through it all, she felt something new flowing through her body. Something warm and strange and powerful. It burned like fire, but it did not hurt. It moved through her blood like a river, washing away the poison that had been killing her and leaving something else in its place. On the morning of the 4th day, Lyara opened her eyes. The first thing she saw was the ceiling of the medical bay, white and smooth and covered with glowing panels that gave off soft light. The second thing she saw was Consul Varric, standing beside her bed with tears running down his face. "Your Highness," he said, and his voice broke on the words. "You are awake." Lyara tried to speak, but her throat was dry and her voice would not come. Varric quickly brought her water, helping her drink from a curved glass designed for patients who could not sit up. "Easy," he said. "Take your time. You have been unconscious for 3 days. 3 days?" Lyara managed to whisper. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, stronger than she expected. "What happened?" "I remember. The assassin. The poison. You were dying," Varric said. "The Christian poison was destroying your blood. Our doctors tried everything, but nothing worked. We thought we were going to lose you, but I am alive." Lyara looked down at her own body, and her silver hands resting on the white sheets. She felt different somehow, though she could not explain exactly how. There was a warmth inside her that had not been there before, a feeling of energy and strength that seemed to come from somewhere deep within. "Yes," Varric said. "You are alive because of the humans." "The humans?" Varric told her everything. He told her about the Earth Federation ship that had received their distress signal, about Commander Ethan Cole and his decision to come aboard despite the risks. He told her about the plan to use human blood to fight the poison, about the impossible science that should not have worked but somehow did, and he told her about the sacrifice. "The commander gave more than 2 liters of his own blood," Varric said quietly. "The extraction nearly killed him. His heart stopped twice during the procedure. The human doctors had to bring him back from death to save him." Lyara listened in silence, her mind struggling to understand. She knew about humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were a young species, barely a few centuries into their time among the stars. The Valkyrie had considered them primitive, unimportant, too young to matter in the grand scheme of things. But this human had given his blood for her. He had risked death for a stranger, for someone he had never met, for a prince of a species that had often treated his people with disdain. Why? Lyara asked. Why would he do this? Varric was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I asked him the same question. He said it was because you needed help, and he could provide it. He said that was enough. That was enough. Lyara repeated softly. Such simple words, but they carried a weight that she could not begin to measure. Where is he now? I need to see him. He's recovering on his ship. The blood loss was severe. His doctors say he will need weeks, perhaps months, to fully heal. Lyara pushed herself up into a sitting position, ignoring the protests of her tired muscles. Take me to him. Your Highness, you should rest. You have only just woken up. Your body needs time, too. My body feels fine, Lyara interrupted. And it was true. She should have felt weak and tired after 3 days of unconsciousness, after nearly dying from poison. Instead, she felt strong, stronger than she had ever felt before. The warmth inside her was spreading, filling every part of her body with energy and life. Varric looked at her with concern, but he did not argue further. He knew that look in her eyes. Lyara was stubborn, perhaps the most stubborn member of the royal family in 1,000 years. When she decided to do something, nothing in the universe could stop her. An hour later, Lyara stood at the entrance to the human medical bay on the ship called Horizon. She had changed out of her hospital gown into simple clothing, and she walked without assistance despite the worried looks of her attendants. Thought the human ship was smaller than she expected, and much less elegant than Valkyrie vessels. Everything was made of metal and plastic, practical rather than beautiful. But there was a feeling of warmth here, a sense of life and energy that reminded her somehow of the warmth she now felt inside herself. A human woman met her at the door. She had gray hair and kind eyes, and she wore the uniform of a medical officer. Your Highness, the woman said, bowing slightly. I am Dr. Lisa Monroe. We have been expecting you. You knew I would come? Lisa smiled. The commander said you would. He said that anyone who survived what you survived would want to know who saved them. He sounds like a wise man. He is a stubborn man, Lisa said. But yes, I suppose he is wise too, in his own way. Please, come with me. She led Lyara through the corridors of the ship, past crew members who stopped and stared at the alien princess walking among them. Lyara paid them no attention. Her focus was entirely on what lay ahead. They reached a small room near the center of the ship. Inside, a man lay on a medical bed, connected to monitors and machines that beeped softly in the quiet air. He was pale, much paler than the other humans Lyara had seen, and there were dark circles under his eyes. But when he saw her standing in the doorway, he smiled. Your Highness, he said. His voice was weak, but there was warmth in it. You are awake. I am glad. Lyara walked slowly toward his bed, her eyes never leaving his face. He was not what she had expected. She had imagined someone larger, perhaps someone who looked like a warrior or a hero. Instead, she saw an ordinary man with tired eyes and a gentle smile. But appearances meant nothing. This ordinary man had done an extraordinary thing. He had given his blood, his life force, to save a stranger. He had faced death without fear, without hesitation, without asking for anything in return. Commander Ethan Cole, Lyara said, I am told that I owe you my life. You owe me nothing, Ethan replied. I did what anyone would do. No. Lyara shook her head firmly. That is not true. Most people would not have done what you did. Most people would have watched from a safe distance, would have told themselves that it was not their problem, that someone else would help. You did not do that. You chose to act, even when action meant risking everything. Ethan was quiet for a moment, looking at her with those tired eyes. Then he said, In my experience, the right choice is usually the hard choice. If it was easy, everyone would do it. Lyara felt something shift inside her, some understanding that went beyond words. She had grown up in a palace, surrounded by people who always agreed with her, who never challenged her or pushed her to be better. She had been taught that the Valkyrie were superior, that the younger races had nothing to offer. But here was a human who had shown more courage, more honor, more simple goodness than anyone she had ever known. He had given his blood for her, and in doing so, he had given her something far more valuable. He had given her a new way of seeing the universe. In my culture, Liara said slowly, there is a ceremony for moments like this. When one person saves another, when one person gives of themselves so that another might live, a bond is formed. It is called the blood binding, and it is the most sacred connection that can exist between two people. Ethan's eyebrows rose slightly. What does that mean exactly? It means that you are no longer a stranger to me, Ethan Cole. It means that your blood flows through my veins, and my life belongs to you as much as it belongs to me. It means that from this day forward, you are my sworn kin, my blood brother. Whatever happens, wherever life takes us, that bond can never be broken. She reached out and took his hand, her silver fingers wrapping around his pale ones. He did not pull away. I do not know what to say, Ethan admitted. You do not need to say anything, Liara replied. Words are not necessary between kin. But I want you to know that I will never forget what you did for me. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the gift you have given me. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Just live a good life, Your Highness. That will be enough. Liara smiled, and for the first time since she had woken up, she felt truly at peace. Call me Liara. We are family now, after all. And there, in that small room on a human ship, surrounded by beeping machines and the hum of engines, a new chapter in the history of two species began. Neither of them knew yet what the future would bring, what challenges they would face, or what victories they would win. But they knew that they would face it together, and that made all the difference. In the weeks that followed, something strange began to happen to Princess Liara. At first, the changes were small, so small that she barely noticed them. She slept less but felt more rested. She ate less but had more energy. Her thoughts were clearer, sharper, faster than they had ever been before. Then came the bigger changes. It started one morning, when Liara was training in the combat room of the repaired Valkyrie flagship. She was practicing sword forms, moving through the ancient patterns that every member of the royal family learned from childhood. Her instructor, a veteran warrior named Captain Torek, watched from the side. Faster, he called out. Your movements are still too slow. A Crixian assassin would have killed you 3 times by now. Liara gritted her teeth and pushed herself harder. She moved through the forms again, trying to increase her speed. And then, suddenly, something clicked inside her. She felt the warmth that had been living in her blood since the transfusion surged through her body. It filled her muscles, her bones, her nerves. Everything seemed to slow down around her while she sped up. She moved through the sword forms faster than she had ever moved before, faster than should have been possible. When she finished, Captain Torek was staring at her with wide eyes. How did you do that? He asked. I do not know, Liara admitted. She looked down at her hands, at the silver skin that now seemed to glow faintly with inner light. I just felt it. The energy was there, and I used it. They tested her that day, and what they found shocked everyone. Lyra's reflexes had doubled. Her strength had increased by 50%. She could run faster, jump higher, and fight longer than any Valkyrie on record. Her senses were sharper too, able to detect sounds and smells that others could not. The human blood that Ethan Cole had given her had not simply saved her life. It had changed her on a fundamental level. This is impossible, said the chief medical officer, a woman named Dr. Vela. She stared at the test results with confusion and wonder. Human blood should have been filtered out of your system within days. But it has somehow merged with your own biology, creating a hybrid that has never existed before. Is it dangerous? Liara asked. We do not know. We have never seen anything like this. Your body has taken the best qualities of both species and combined them. You have Velthury grace and longevity, but also human adaptability and physical strength. Word spread quickly through the Velthury Empire. The princess who had been saved by human blood. The princess who had become something new, something more than either species alone. Some called it a miracle. Others called it an abomination. Most simply did not know what to make of it. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, forces were moving that would soon change everything. The Crixian Dominion had ruled their section of space for thousands of years through fear and violence. They were a proud species, insectoid in nature, with hard shells and sharp claws and no concept of mercy. They had sent the assassin to kill Princess Liara because she had been working to unite the free species against Crixian expansion. When they learned that she had survived, and how she had survived, they were furious. "This is unacceptable," said Supreme Commander Vex, the leader of the Crixian military forces. He stood before the War Council, his massive form towering over the other members. "The princess lives. The alliance between humans and Velthury grows stronger. Every day we wait, our enemies become more dangerous. What do you suggest?" asked one of the council members. "War," Vex replied simply. "Total war. We gather every ship, every soldier, every weapon we have. We strike at Velthurus Prime itself. We destroy the princess, destroy the alliance, and remind the galaxy why the Crixian Dominion is to be feared." The council voted unanimously in favor. 300 warships began to gather at the edge of Crixian space, preparing for the largest military operation in a century. On the horizon, Ethan Cole was finally recovering enough to return to active duty. He was still weak, and his doctors warned him that he needed months more rest. But he refused to stay in bed while his friends faced danger. "You are as stubborn as a Velthury," Lisa Monroe told him as she reluctantly cleared him for light duty. "I will take that as a compliment," Ethan replied with a smile. He was reading reports in his quarters when Lieutenant Amy Grant brought him the intelligence briefing. Her face was grim as she handed him the datapad. "Sir, you need to see this." Ethan read the report, and his blood went cold. 300 Crixian warships. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen planets. And they were all heading for Velthurus Prime. "How long do we have?" he asked. 2 weeks, maybe less." "They are moving fast." Ethan thought quickly. The Velthury fleet was strong, but not strong enough to face 300 warships alone. The Earth Federation could send support, but their closest battle group was 3 weeks away. By the time help arrived, the war would already be over. "We need to find another way," Ethan said. He spent the next several days thinking, planning, searching for any solution that might turn the tide. He studied old battle records and scientific journals. He talked to engineers and doctors and anyone else who might have useful ideas. And then, one night, he remembered something that Liara had told him about: Velthury biology. She had explained that Velthury bodies could enter a dormant state when needed, shutting down non-essential functions to survive in extreme conditions. This dormancy was controlled by certain chemicals in their blood, chemicals that could be artificially triggered. What if, Ethan thought, the same principle could be used in reverse? What if they could trigger enhanced states instead of dormant ones? He contacted Liara immediately. "The human blood changed you," he said. "It made you faster, stronger, more adaptable. What if we could do the same thing for others? Not permanently, but temporarily. Just long enough to make a difference in battle." Liara was quiet for a long moment, thinking through the implications. "You are suggesting that we give human blood to our soldiers?" "Not raw blood. That would be too dangerous and take too long. But maybe a serum, something that contains the key compounds without the rejection risk. Your doctors have been studying your biology for weeks. They must have learned something that could help. It would be experimental, Lyra said slowly. Risky. We do not know what side effects there might be. I know. But the alternative is watching your world burn while 300 Crixian ships tear it apart. Sometimes the risky choice is the only choice. Lyra smiled, a fierce expression that made her look like a warrior queen. You are right, Ethan Cole. We did not survive this long by playing it safe. I will speak with my doctors. We will find a way to make this work. Over the next 10 days, the greatest scientists of the Velthari Empire worked alongside human researchers from the horizon. They studied Lyra's transformed blood, analyzed its properties, and tried to recreate the effects in a controlled serum. It was not easy. There were failures and setbacks, formulas that did not work, and test subjects who suffered temporary illness before recovering. But slowly, step by step, they made progress. 5 days before the Crixian fleet was scheduled to arrive, they finally had a working prototype. It is not perfect, Dr. Lisa Monroe admitted as she presented the results to the combined human and Velthari command staff. The effects only last for about 20 hours, and then the subject will crash hard. They will be exhausted and weak for at least a day afterward. But during those 20 hours, she pulled up a display showing the test results. Enhanced reflexes, increased strength, faster healing, improved sensory perception. Everything that Lyra had gained permanently, normal Velthari soldiers could gain temporarily. How many doses can we produce? Lyra asked. With the resources we have available, about 1 million doses. Enough for your entire military force. Lyra turned to face the Velthari generals who stood around the table. They were old soldiers, veterans of many wars, skeptical of new ideas and foreign influences. But they had also seen the test results. They knew what was coming. The choice is yours, she told them. We can fight the Crixians the way we have always fought, and we will probably lose. Or we can try something new, something that has never been done before. We can accept help from our human allies, not just in ships and soldiers, but in the very blood that flows through our veins. The room was silent for a long moment. Then the oldest general, a scarred warrior named Lord Varric, stood up. I have fought the Crixians for 200 years, he said. I have watched them destroy cities and murder innocent people. I have buried more friends than I can count. If drinking human blood will give me the strength to finally end this war, then I say we do it. I volunteer to be the first. One by one, the other generals stood and made the same pledge. Then the admirals. Then the captains and lieutenants and sergeants. When the last voice fell silent, Lyra looked around the room with pride in her eyes. Then it is decided, she said. In 2 days, we begin the largest experiment in the history of 2 species. And in 5 days, we show the Crixian Dominion what happens when humans and Velthari stand together. The roar of approval that filled the room could be heard throughout the entire flagship. And somewhere, watching from the back of the room, Ethan Cole smiled. He had given his blood to save one person. Now that gift was about to save millions. The Battle of Velthar's Prime began at dawn on a cold winter morning. 300 Crixian warships emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects, their weapons already charging, their shields already raised. They had come to destroy, to conquer, to teach the galaxy a lesson about the cost of defying the Dominion. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Princess Lyra stood on the bridge of the Velthari flagship Eternal Dawn, watching the enemy fleet spread across the stars. She wore battle armor for the first time in her life, silver plates that covered her body and protected her vital organs. A plasma sword hung at her side, and her white hair was tied back in a warrior's knot. Beside her stood Ethan Cole. He had refused to stay on the horizon during the battle, insisting that his place was with his blood sister. The Velthari had given him armor of his own, specially designed to fit a human body. He looked out of place among the tall silver aliens, but his eyes showed no fear. "The serum distribution is complete," reported Admiral Varric, who had been promoted to command the combined fleet. 1 million soldiers have received the dose. They are ready. How do you feel? Ethan asked Lyra quietly. "Strong," she replied. "Stronger than I have ever felt. Whatever happens today, I am glad you are here with me. There is nowhere else I would rather be." The Crixian commander sent a message before the battle began. It was Supreme Commander Vex himself, his insectoid face filling the view screen, his mandibles clicking with contempt. "Princess Lyra," he said, "you should have died from our poison. Instead, you chose to pollute your blood with human contamination. Now you will die anyway, along with everyone who stands with you. This is the price of defiance." Lyra smiled, a cold expression that showed no fear. "Commander Vex, you made a mistake when you sent your assassin. You showed us that we needed allies. You showed us that we could not stand alone. And you showed us something else too. You showed us that humans are willing to sacrifice everything for those they care about. That is a power you will never understand." She cut the transmission. "All ships," she commanded, "activate the serum protocol. And then, attack." Throughout the Velthari fleet, 1 million soldiers felt the serum take effect. It was like fire spreading through their veins, like lightning dancing through their nerves. Their hearts beat faster, their senses sharpened, their muscles filled with strength they had never known. The human blood had awakened something inside them, something ancient and powerful. It was the spirit of a species that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars, a species that had clawed its way up from nothing to reach the stars. That spirit now flowed through Velthari bodies, and it turned ordinary soldiers into warriors beyond compare. The battle began. Velthari, ships moved faster than they had ever moved before. Pilots pushed their vessels beyond their design limits and survived. Gunners tracked targets with impossible precision. Engineers kept damaged systems running through sheer will and determination. The Crixians had expected an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever seen. The first hour of battle was chaos. Ships exploded on both sides, filling the void with fire and debris. The Crixians had numbers, but the Velthari had speed and precision. For every Velthari ship that fell, 3 Crixian vessels died in response. Lyra coordinated the battle from the eternal dawn, but she knew that coordination alone would not be enough. The Crixians were adapting, learning, adjusting their tactics. If she did not act soon, their numerical advantage would eventually overwhelm her forces. "I am taking a fighter," she announced. "Admiral Varric, you have command of the fleet." "Your Highness, you cannot," Varric protested. "You are too valuable to risk in direct combat." "I am not too valuable to die for my people," Lyra replied. "If we lose this battle, I die anyway. I would rather die fighting than watching." She turned to Ethan. "Will you come with me?" Ethan grinned. "I thought you would never ask." They launched in a 2-person fighter, Lyra at the controls and Ethan handling the weapon systems. The small ship darted through the chaos of battle, dodging debris and weapons fire, heading straight for the heart of the Crixian formation. "There," Lyra said, pointing to the largest ship in the enemy fleet. "That is Vex's command vessel. If we can take it out, the rest of their fleet will fall apart. That ship has shields strong enough to block 100 fighters," Ethan pointed out. "How do we get through?" "We do not get through. We go around." Lyra's eyes were shining with the light of battle. "There is a maintenance hatch on the underside of the ship, near the engine section. It is designed for external repairs. The shields do not cover it because no one would be crazy enough to try to enter through there. Except us. Except us." They flew through a storm of fire. the fighters' shields taking hit after hit as they approached the massive command ship. Ethan shot down 3 enemy fighters that tried to intercept them, his human reflexes enhanced by the adrenaline pumping through his veins. The maintenance hatch was exactly where Liara had predicted. They crashed through it at full speed, the fighter crumpling around them as it absorbed the impact. Both of them were thrown from the wreckage, bruised and bleeding but still alive. "That was your plan?" Ethan groaned as he pulled himself to his feet. "Crash into the enemy ship and hope we survive?" "It worked, did it not?" Liara replied with a fierce smile. She drew her plasma sword, and it hummed to life with deadly energy. "Now we find Commander Vex and end this war." They fought their way through the corridors of the Crixian command ship. Every few meters, enemy soldiers appeared to stop them, and every few meters, those soldiers died. Liara moved like water, flowing around attacks and striking with deadly precision. Ethan fought beside her with his plasma pistol, covering her back and protecting her flanks. The human blood in Lyra's veins sang with the joy of battle. She felt invincible, unstoppable, more alive than she had ever been. And through the bond they shared, she knew that Ethan felt it too. They reached the bridge together, bursting through the doors in an explosion of violence. Commander Vex stood in the center of the room, surrounded by his elite guards. He was massive, twice the size of a human, with armor that looked thick enough to stop any weapon. "Kill them," Vex ordered. The elite guards attacked. There were 12 of them, the best warriors the Crixian Dominion had to offer. Against any normal enemies, they would have been unstoppable. But Liara was not normal anymore, and Ethan had never been ordinary. The battle lasted 3 minutes. When it was over, 12 Crixian guards lay dead on the floor, and Liara stood before Commander Vex with her sword pointed at his throat. "Surrender," she said. "Your guards are dead. Your ship is infiltrated. Your fleet is losing. It is over." Vex stared at her with hatred in his compound eyes. "What are you?" he demanded. "You are not Veltari anymore. I can smell the human on you. You are a monster, a hybrid, an abomination." "I am something new," Liara agreed. "I am what happens when 2 species work together instead of fighting. I am proof that the future does not belong to those who conquer and destroy. It belongs to those who protect and create." She pressed the sword closer to his throat. "Now surrender, or die. The choice is yours." Vex was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached for the communications panel beside him. "All ships," he said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Stand down. The battle is over. We surrender." Throughout the void around Veltharus Prime, Crixian weapons went silent. Shields dropped. Ships stopped fighting and began to drift. The war was over. Liara lowered her sword and turned to Ethan. They were both covered in blood and burns, exhausted beyond measure. But they were alive, and they had won. "We did it," Ethan said quietly. "No," Liara replied. "You did it. All of this, everything that happened today, started with you giving your blood to save a stranger. That was the spark that lit this fire. That was the force that changed everything." She reached out and took his hand. "In the history books, they will remember this as the Battle of Veltharus Prime, but I will remember it as the day a human taught the galaxy what true courage looks like." Ethan squeezed her hand and smiled. "I am just glad we survived. Now let us go home. I think we have earned some rest." 1 year later, Liara was crowned Empress of the Veltari Empire. She stood in the great hall of the palace, wearing robes of silver and gold, while millions watched the ceremony through view screens across the galaxy. Beside her, as her sworn blood brother and official advisor, stood Ethan Cole. He had remained on Veltharus Prime after the battle, helping to rebuild and strengthen the alliance between humans and Veltari. The bond between them had only grown stronger with time. After the ceremony, they stood together on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The twin moons of Veltharus Prime hung in the sky, casting silver light over the buildings and gardens below. 1 year ago, Lyra said, I was dying on a damaged ship in the middle of nowhere. Now I am Empress. It is strange how quickly things can change. Change is what makes life interesting, Ethan replied. If everything stayed the same forever, what would be the point? Lyra smiled at him. You changed everything, Ethan. Not just for me, but for 2 entire species. When you gave me your blood, you did not just save my life. You showed the Velthari that humans were worthy of respect. You proved that younger,